Hello, I'm Nancy L.T. Hamilton and welcome to my studio. Today we are doing a video on, what are we doing, Nancy? We are coating a crucible. We are refining some 18 karat gold, putting it into an ingot mold, and then creating sheet from it. And this video is a continuation in a way of my gold testing video. So it should be exciting. I'll end up with some 18 karat sheet, which I haven't seen in a long time. Pricey stuff. So thanks for coming and enjoy. So I'm gonna glaze this crucible, and Amber Romero Burquist is with me today. We're gonna get this prepped for Chimera. I'm gonna be using the butane torch. Big tip, you don't want to use your little kitchen one for this. So what I've done, wait, let me talk first, is I got Handy Flux, which has fluorides in it, so you want to have ventilation. They're not good for you. And I also have on UV protectant glasses, because this staring at a flame constantly will ruin your eyes. Right now I'm heating the crucible up. This is not the handle that goes with this.
Does all paste flux have fluorides in it?
I know that Handy Flux does. I don't know about all of them in the world. So see how it's starting to get white? This is similar to what happens when you solder. I'm probably going to run out of gas in the middle of this. And I've got this little oven thing here to hold the heat. So if I was smart, I'd leave it in there and let it warm up like that. If you're going to be making an ingot.
So are those just basic fire bricks that you have?
Yeah, kiln fire bricks. And sometimes I switch that out by putting my ingot mold on top so that heats up while I'm doing it, but I'm not going to be actually doing an ingot today, so I'm not going to have it on. And this takes 10-15 minutes. Once this stuff gets pretty molten, I'm going to start walking it around by turning the crucible so that the glass that is the borax in the flux will start coating. If I have holes or weird spots that don't cover, I can always add little pinches of borax to it. So this thing ideally is going to be pretty pinky hot.
Can you reflux a previously fluxed crucible?
Yes, you certainly can. You can use either the paint on the flux method, or you can use borax to recoat it. Very good question, Miss Amber. So I'm going to try to do this so you can see. So I'm not really keeping it in there for this demo. Just because, see that big glob there? I'm going to focus my heat on that, and then I'm going to start. It's kind of like soldering, where the flux is going to follow the heat, and you got to keep it melted. This is not quite hot enough yet. Let's see if I can turn my torch up anymore. There we go. When you do this with the acetylene, I did one at Chimera yesterday, and what happens is it gets very sooty, so it's a little black. This is cleaner. Come on, go in that hole. Sometimes I cheat. Where's this? I need a solder pick. Grab one of those. Sometimes you can just take a pick and move it over like that. Kind of fill in. I don't know what happens, but sometimes these little holes develop where it doesn't want to flow in there. Yeah, and I don't know if it's something going on with the walls of the crucible or not. Remember, everything you're using in here needs to be put on some kind of fire brick so you don't burn a hole in your bench. And see, that side we've already got a nice coating on. Let's see if we can tilt this. That little hole right in the middle. Wedge that there and get my pick and encourage things to flow. I like spreading solder during.
So the solder pick doesn't need to be fairly clean.
Well, yeah, I don't want to have it covered with metal.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean this gets so hot. So we're almost done here. If this does not have a pour spout, but if it did, I would make sure to coat the pour spout. I'm gonna just spread some of it up here on the surface here and call this my pour area. You can do it all around the rim if you want, so you don't have to be limited. So we're almost done. I just need to spread it a little bit over on this back wall here, and we will have a perfectly glazed crucible. Just a little on the edge. Probably can even get away with doing that. That had flux on it. Okay, I didn't run out of gas. Yay!
Yay!
All right, let's call that done. Take a look at it. So there we have our glazed crucible using the Handy Flex. This area is not perfect over here, but I don't care. Thanks for coming by, Amber.
Thank you.
Okay. So I made this ingot, and not only did I put it in too big an ingot mold, but I also cracked the edges by not annealing properly. So we're starting over, and I'm just going to demo melting metal with this. It started out as a bunch of pieces of scrap that I melted down. Process is the same whether you're re-melting an ingot or redoing or dropping scrap in here. Okay, so what do I need? I need some borax. I'm gonna put a pinch of borax, a big one this time, not the little bits. That's a lot of borax. Let me take some. Try again. I have on UV protecting glasses, which make me look incredibly cool. And I have graphite stir stick that I'll give this a swirl. It helps pull the impurities to the outside, and when this gets all sticky, nice and sticky when it's hot, hopefully weird things we don't want in the gold will stick to the side, like if you forgot to take out a spring from a clasp. And I have this mini ingot mold, and it kind of hanging it over there because I want to heat that whole thing up. I want my mold nice and hot so the metal doesn't freeze when I pour it. Got my spout pointed in the right direction so I can just go like that. And I've got my almost said irrigation ventilation on. Oh, it'd be good if I started the torch. Hold on, I'll be right back. Torch is on. I also forgot to mention I switched out my tips from a number 3 to a number 5 big guy. If you have a little torch, rosebud multi-orifice tip, really fabulous for doing this process. Big noisy torch, gassy. By the way, you don't have to have this kiln kind of thing I made with kiln brick. It just helps the crucible stay hot, and you use less gas and melt your metal faster. Plus, it's a safe container for all this fire. Get nice and red. And throw another little pinch in. Should have had my glove on, but I didn't. So I'm going to stop in the middle. Starting to liquefy. Let's see if I can show it to you. As soon as I pull my torch off, it stops. I'm kind of aiming my flame over near my pour spout, holding it at an angle. If I had my kiln, I would put that block in my kiln and heat it up. But my kiln is at Chimera. Starting to warm up my stir stick just by placing it near the fire. Starting to liquefy. It's forming an oval. Okay, Okay, I've got a nice little button here. Add a little more flux. A little stir. Not liquid enough. I'm going to start to swirl it and hope that the materials that I don't want on it get stuck to the sides. Ready to pour here. Bring it up. Try to heat my block a little bit. Start heating down by my spout. Wherever it went. Get it all? Okay, I'll leave my torch up here because the tip's so hot. So we're still glowing in here. Looks good. Got a little mini ingot up there and the little mini ingot thingy. All right, let's see if we can get this out. Yep. Nice thing about the graphite. Slippery. We have our ingot. I'm going to quench it and then I'm going to anneal it. Okay, for annealing I'm going to spray it with fire scoff because I can get fire stain on this. It's 18 karat and it has copper in it. And copper can cause fire stain or fire scale. So we're going to use a product that helps to keep it from doing that. And we also do the back side. All right. Now we're going to just heat this until it has a red glow, and then I'm going to sustain that heat for a couple minutes. Harder to see it with the flux on, but the flux will blast soon, and we'll be able to see better. I don't know what that glob is. Probably borax. Yep. Okay, we have a dull glow, so I'm going to turn my torch flame down and just kind of keep this at a light glow, dull red as some people call it. For a couple minutes. You don't need to watch all this. I'll come back when we're ready. Excuse me, one side note, if you have gunk on it, you shouldn't have too much if you're using a stop box. I mean, that's pretty clean. If you didn't use stop box, you would have copper on here, and then I would brass brush that off. So there's the pretty side. There's the Feo side. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to dry it off really, really, really well so that I don't get rust on my rollers of my rolling mill. If by chance you have a rolling mill where this will not fit through, you can actually make sheet doing this too, just a hammer. But you can go ahead and pound this flat. Don't forget to anneal often. You'll notice a difference in the sound and the feel of the hammer. It'll be a little more bouncy, a little more springy. This is a two-handed procedure. And I'm holding the camera with the other. When you're holding it, keep your fingers far back. I like to use one. My saying is you only lose one finger that way. If you hold it with two, you can hit both. Oh, the joy of being a jeweler. Okay, rolling mill time. Here we are at ye old rolling mill. What you want to do is keep the rolling in the same direction. So if I'm going to go longwise in here, I'm going to roll it. I can put it in this way, or I can flip it around and put it in this way. That doesn't matter. But what I can't do is go crosswise. It will cause some cracking and other issues down the road. So if you're gonna, that's in between annealing. So I'm gonna roll it through going this way, and then I'm gonna anneal it, and then I'm gonna roll it through going this way, tightening the rollers down. each time. And honestly, determining when your pieces work hardened or not is not going to have to be up to you. So while I do this, I'm going to talk about some problems. If you get buckling, that can happen because you're changing your direction during rolling, like I talked about, from going from long to wide. So what you need to do on that is re-anneal and start rolling it through only in one direction. If you get cracks along the edge, the ingot could not be of uniform shape, or it was rolled too many times without annealing it. This is starting to get a little hard. I'm gonna go and anneal it in a second after I finish babbling here. If you get cracking and flaking, that could be because your metal ingot was too cold when you poured it in, or you have too much old material in there, or it was contaminated. So that probably will involve you recasting or sending it out to a refiner, especially if it's contaminated. If you've got one side that's thinner than the other, that usually means that your rollers are not even, so you need to adjust those. So those are some things to look out for when making sheet metal. So off to annealing again, and then rolling, and then annealing, and then rolling, and annealing, and time consuming. Butane gets up to about 3578 Fahrenheit compared to acetylene at 4532, and this is with air mixture, not oxygen. Sterling melts at 1640 and fine silver melts at 1763. So I went with sterling because it melts at approximately 120 degrees less. And I'm using sheet cutouts. Ow, that got warm from the Crucible. That was dumb. Because I know there's no solder on these pieces. They're just the remains of piercing. So we're going to try using the butane. I probably should change the tank out, but I won't, because I'm an idiot. Oh, and I have my ingot mold up here so that gets warmed up too. And if you're using butane, you have to use the big tips. Those little ones should be here for a month. I don't even know if this is going to be hot enough. We'll see. It should, theoretically. I figure while we're waiting for this to melt, we should talk about ingot molds. My favorite are these graphite. They're kind of sooty feeling and gets all over your hands. But keep them in a plastic bag. Nothing sticks to them, none of the metal sticks to them, which is great. There are steel and cast iron ingot molds too, and you can also cut your charcoal block up for pouring ingots into, or wire ingots too. But almost all the molds, except for the graphite and the charcoal block, put a layer of soot on it, and what a lot of people do is use oil. You can use peanut oil, a petroleum-based oil, but if you're using petroleum-based oil, remember you're getting petroleum-based fumes, so something to consider. And you basically heat the ingot mold up after you've placed oil on, a generous amount of oil, like you can paint brush it on or smear it on with some paper towel, oil saturated paper towel. But what you want to do is coat the whole thing with it and then heat it, and that smokes and creates this layer of soot over the mold. Another option is to use a really dirty gassy flame, like an acetylene torch. You can turn off the oxygen, not turn on your oxygen if you have oxyacetylene, and just go with the gas part and hold the gas, hold the mold upside down and aim the torch at the mold. Try to get pull it back so that you get the smoky part of the flame hitting the mold. You can also use a candle in the same way where the soot comes off the tip. Have that coat your mold. This is taking quite a while. We really don't have a lot going on yet, but I'm not giving up yet. When you're prepping your molds, don't use WD-40. I've heard of people having problems with their metal sticking using it. So, anyway, I'm going to be here for a while. I'll check back in if and when we get close. Well, I'm giving up. It's kind of melted, sort of. Maybe with a smaller crucible, with just a few flakes at a time, it would work. But that 1,000-degree difference between the butane and the approximate 1,000 degrees between the butane and the acetylene is big. You know, I should have this melted and poured by now in 10 minutes. So I'm going to say cautiously that it could work under the right conditions, perhaps, but you're going to go through a lot of gas. So I'm going to stick with the acetylene for melting mine. You need to use either propane, oxygen mix, or an acetylene oxygen mix or acetylene air. So yeah, that's when I'm done with the testing and coating and blah blah blah. Well, I'm glad that's over with. It's hot in here. You can hear the air conditioner in the background. I had a good time. Hope you did. Come join me again in the studio. And arrivederci. Ciao.